Why arguments are weak and silent victory is power, the greatest mistake people make with enemies. Most people believe power comes from proving they are right, winning arguments, exposing lies, publicly defending their honor with words. Machiavelli would call this fatal stupidity. Because the moment you argue with an enemy, you have already lowered yourself to their battlefield. Arguments do not defeat enemies. Arguments feed them. Your enemy wants your emotional reaction, your attention, your energy, your loss of composure. When you argue, you give them all four. Machiavelli's first hidden rule of power: never fight on terrain chosen by your enemy. Arguments are emotional terrain, and emotional terrain always favors the reckless, the manipulative, the shameless, not the powerful. True power is psychological dominance, not verbal victory. Why arguments always backfire? Let's break this down coldly. When you argue, you justify yourself. You appear uncertain, you explain when you appear defensive. You raise your voice, you lose authority. You react when you surrender control. Even if you win logically, you lose strategically. Because the enemy still occupies your mind, others see emotional engagement. Your calm image cracks. Powerful figures rarely argue. They observe, wait, and reposition. The psychological truth: no one teaches human beings do not respect logic, they respect control. The one who remains calm, speaks less, reacts slower, shows. Emotional immunity is automatically perceived as superior. This is why judges, generals, kings, and CEOs speak less, not more. Mental victory vs. verbal victory. Verbal victory: temporary, loud, ego-driven, emotionally expensive. Mental victory: silent, permanent, invisible, effortless. Machiavelli taught that the best defeat is the one your enemy doesn't realize happened. Your enemy's weakest point: your enemy believes provocation creates control, reaction equals power, noise equals dominance, but the human brain works differently. When someone provokes and gets no reaction, the brain experiences confusion, loss of control, self-doubt, obsession. Silence is not weakness. Silence is psychological suffocation. Why silence hurts more than words? Neuroscience confirms. The brain seeks closure. Unanswered actions create anxiety. Ignored threats feel humiliating. When you do not argue, the enemy replays the interaction. They imagine meanings. They question their influence. You live calmly. They spiral the power hierarchy of response from weakest to strongest: begging, explaining, arguing, defending, justifying, correcting, ignoring, observing, strategically responding. Once most people live in levels 1-4. Powerful people operate at 8 and 9. Machiavelli's core insight: men are quicker to forget the death of a father than the loss of power. Your enemy is not trying to insult you. They are trying to extract power from you. When you argue, you hand it over. When you don't, you take theirs. What this series will teach you across the next parts: you will learn how to shatter enemies mentally without confrontation, how to use silence, timing, and perception as weapons, how to make enemies lose confidence in themselves, how to win without appearing aggressive, how to become psychologically untouchable. You will stop reacting. You will start controlling the mental frame. Summary: arguments are emotional traps. Power is psychological, not verbal. Silence destabilizes enemies. Calm presence equals dominance. Mental victory lasts longer than verbal wins. If you master this, enemies won't fight you. They'll fear miscalculating you. Emotional immunity: why your enemy can't touch you anymore. The first thing enemies try to control is your emotions. Before enemies attack your reputation, resources, or position, they attack your emotional balance. Why? Because a person who is emotionally shaken makes bad decisions, reveals weaknesses, overreacts, loses long-term vision. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. But the deeper truth is this: the first method for estimating power is emotional control. What emotional immunity really means: emotional immunity does not mean you feel nothing, you suppress emotions, you become cold or robotic. Emotional immunity means emotions do not control your actions. Provocation does not change your behavior. Insults do not alter your strategy. You still feel, but you do not leak reactions. Why? Reactions are psychological blood. Every reaction feeds your enemy. When you get angry, they feel powerful. Defend yourself. They feel influential. Explain. They feel validated. Lose composure. They feel victorious. Even negative reactions reward the attacker. Silence and calm, on the other hand, produce uncertainty, loss of leverage, psychological withdrawal, the enemy's core expectation, your enemy expects, anger, justification, emotional exposure, loss of control when they don't get it, their internal script breaks, the brain hates unpredictability. This is where mental defeat begins. Why calm people are terrifying. A calm person signals internal stability, confidence, higher status, long-term thinking. Historically, kings rarely shouted, generals spoke quietly, judges maintained neutral tone. Loudness has always belonged to the insecure. Machiavelli's hidden observation. Machiavelli noticed something subtle. Those who show emotion quickly are easier to manipulate. Those who delay emotional response, gather information, observe motives, control. Timing. Timing is power. The emotional delay principle. This is the first practical weapon. Never react immediately. Delay your reply, your expression, your tone. The delay does three things. It calms your nervous system. It deprives your enemy of satisfaction. It signals dominance. The one who reacts slower is higher in the hierarchy. The psychological effect on your enemy. When you remain emotionally immune, your enemy experiences confusion. Why didn't this work? Doubt. Did I miscalculate? Obsession. What is he thinking? Frustration. I can't control this person. Over time, this creates self-destruction. You stay calm. They expose themselves. Why emotional exposure is dangerous. The moment you show anger, hurt, fear, insecurity, you give your enemy a map of your weak points, a strategy guide, a button to press again. Enemies don't need truth. They need patterns. Emotional immunity breaks the pattern. The mirror strategy, advanced when emotionally immune. You become a mirror. You reflect nothing, absorb nothing, reveal nothing. The enemy sees their own aggression, their own instability, their own desperation. People are disturbed by mirrors that don't respond. Internal vs. external control. Internally, you acknowledge emotion, you understand it, you store it. Externally, you show calm, you show restraint, you show neutrality. This split is elite level control. Training emotional immunity. Daily practice. Pause before responding. Count to 5 silently before speaking. Neutral facial expression. No smirks, no frowns, no micro reactions. Controlled breathing, slow breath, slow heart, calm voice. Detached self-talk. This is information, not an attack. Observation mindset. Ask internally, what are they trying to extract? Why this terrifies enemies long-term? Because enemies rely on predictability, emotional leverage, reaction loops. When those disappear, attacks decrease, respect increases. Distance forms. You become mentally expensive to engage with. Summary. Emotional reactions feed enemies. Calm equals authority. Delayed response signals dominance. Emotional immunity destabilizes attackers. The unreadable mind is the strongest weapon. Master this first. Without emotional immunity, none of the next tricks work. Silence is not absence, it is pressure. Most people fear silence. They rush to fill it with words, explanations, defenses, or jokes. Machiavelli understood something most never do. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is a psychological weight. When you stay silent at the right moment, you force your enemy to carry that weight alone. Why humans are programmed to fear silence. The human brain is designed to seek feedback, look for approval or rejection, interpret social cues. Silence removes all cues. This creates anxiety, overthinking, loss of certainty. Your enemy doesn't know. What you think, what you plan, whether you are offended, whether they succeeded or failed. Uncertainty is torture to the ego. Why arguing feels natural but is weak. Arguing feels natural because it releases emotional pressure. It creates a sense of control. It gives temporary relief, but relief is not power. Silence feels uncomfortable because it delays emotional release. It creates internal tension. Power always feels uncomfortable at first. Machiavelli's silent domination principle. Machiavelli observed that powerful men spoke less, responded slower, allowed others to reveal themselves. Silence forces others to over-explain, justify, contradict themselves, expose intent. Every extra word your enemy speaks is information. Silence reverses the power dynamic in a confrontation. The speaker is seeking validation. The silent one controls the frame. When you stay silent, you are not chasing approval. You are not defending status. You are not emotionally invested. This signals higher rank in the social hierarchy. The 3 types of strategic silence. 1. Immediate silence after provocation, when insulted or challenged. Do not respond immediately, maintain neutral expression, hold eye contact briefly. Then disengage effect, the enemy feels exposed, the insult loses momentum, others notice your composure too. Delayed silence, no follow-up after a confrontation. Do not message, do not clarify, do not explain effect. The enemy replays the interaction, they question their impact, anxiety grows over time, silence ages like poison. Selective silence, respond to some, ignore others, you respond. To important people, to strategic matters, you ignore. Provocations, insults, emotional bait effect. You control relevance, you decide who exists in your mental world. Being ignored selectively is deeply humiliating. Why silence makes enemies self-destruct when deprived of reaction. Enemies often escalate attacks, say something reckless, reveal insecurity, damage their own image. They expose themselves, trying to pull you down. You stay still, they unravel. The unfinished conversation effect. Silence leaves conversations open-ended. The brain hates unfinished loops. Your enemy's mind keeps asking, did I cross a line? Did they notice? Am I being judged? Meanwhile, you've already moved on. This asymmetry is dominance. Why silence is misinterpreted as weakness at first. In the short term, silence may be misread as submission, fear, confusion, but this is temporary. Over time, silence becomes mystery, authority, emotional superiority. Weak people cannot sustain silence. Strong people can. When silence becomes intimidation, silence becomes intimidating when paired with calm body language, neutral facial expression, lack of urgency. You are not avoiding. You are unbothered. Nothing threatens the ego more than irrelevance. Strategic silence in public vs. private public settings. Silence protects your image. The aggressor looks emotional. You look composed. Private settings, silence forces introspection. The aggressor fills the void with doubt. Different settings, same outcome, mental pressure. What silence is not passive aggression, avoidance, fear. Silence is withholding access. Access is power. Training strategic silence, resist the urge to reply, instantly let awkward pauses exist. End conversations early, leave messages unanswered. When unnecessary, observe reactions without intervening. You are training others to self-regulate around you. Machiavelli's unspoken truth. Those who speak the least are often feared the most. Because no one knows what they know, what they tolerate, where the line truly is. Ambiguity creates obedience. Summary silence creates psychological pressure. It forces enemies to reveal themselves. It reverses power dynamics. It causes overthinking and self-doubt. Strategic silence is controlled, not passive. If emotional immunity makes you untouchable, strategic silence makes you unreadable. Control the frame. Control the mind. Power is rarely about winning arguments. It is about deciding what the argument is about in the first place. Machiavelli understood this deeply. The person who defines reality controls perception, and perception controls behavior. Your enemies do not defeat you by logic. They defeat you by framing, by choosing the battlefield of meaning where you are already at a disadvantage. This section explains how mental defeat happens through framing and how to reverse it. 1. What framing really means. A frame is the mental context through which people interpret events. Who is right or wrong, who is strong or weak, who is reasonable or emotional, who is victim or aggressor. Once a frame is accepted, all future information is filtered through it. Example, if you are framed as defensive, everything you say sounds like justification. If your enemy is framed as confident, even their mistakes look intentional. Machiavelli warned that truth without control of perception is useless. Why arguing automatically loses the frame. When you argue, you unconsciously accept the other person's frame. If someone says you're selfish and power-hungry, and you respond, no, I'm not selfish, here's why, you just accepted that selfishness is the topic, that you are on trial, that they are the judge. You lost before you spoke. Machiavellian insight. Defending yourself places you beneath the attacker. The enemy's favorite frames. Your enemies often use predictable psychological frames. Frame 1. Moral superiority. They present themselves as good, ethical, or concerned. You become the villain by default. Any resistance makes you look guilty. Frame 2. Emotional instability. They provoke you then. Frame you as angry, defensive, or insecure. Calm, suspicious, anger. Proof against you. Frame 3. Public accountability. They bring issues into public spaces. Silence looks like admission. Speaking looks like damage control. Machiavelli observed that public judgment is rarely rational. It is theatrical. 4. The core rule. Never accept a hostile frame. You are not obligated to respond within someone else's psychological structure. Silence, redirection, or reframing is often more powerful than explanation. Examples of frame refusal: that's not the conversation worth having. You're focused on the wrong issue. Interesting assumption. Let's talk about results instead. These responses do not argue, do not deny, do not explain. They shift authority back to you. 5. Reframing, turning attacks into weaknesses. Reframing does not fight the accusation. It relabels it. Example: attack, you're manipulative. Reframe, I plan carefully and think ahead. Some people aren't used to that. What changed? Manipulation, honesty, foresight, immorality, honesty, intelligence. The enemy now appears reactive and unsophisticated. Machiavelli understood that labels are weapons. 6. Strategic ambiguity. Let them fill the gaps. One of the most powerful mental weapons is controlled vagueness. Why? The human mind hates uncertainty. People project their own fears into silence. If accused publicly and you respond minimally, people can believe what they want. Your enemy is forced to over-explain, repeat accusations, appear obsessed. Silence. Composure shifts suspicion toward them. Frame time, not emotion. Enemies want emotional reactions. You control time instead. Delay responses, pause decisions, avoid instant reactions. Time reframes power. The calm one looks dominant. The rushed one looks desperate. Machiavelli wrote that haste benefits the attacker, not the ruler. 8. The high ground frame. Always aim to reframe from personal 8 structural, emotional 8 strategic, moral 8 strategic, moral. Practical example: instead of "that's unfair to me," say "this approach creates long-term problems." You are no longer a participant, you are an evaluator. Why the strong rarely explain themselves. People who constantly explain seek approval, fear rejection, lack authority. People in power make statements, let others adjust. Machiavellian truth: explanation is submission disguised as clarity. Mental victory without conflict. When you control the frame, you don't need to argue, you don't need to convince, you don't need to win debates. Your enemy exhausts themselves trying to pull you into their reality. They lose mentally before any open conflict occurs. Key takeaways: arguing accepts the enemy's frame. Frames decide winners before facts matter. Reframing is more powerful than rebuttal. Silence can be strategic dominance. Authority is felt, not explained. Weaponized calm. How emotional control destroys aggressive minds. Aggressive people believe one thing above all else: emotion equals power. They raise their voice, escalate tension, apply pressure, provoke reactions. They expect resistance to look loud, emotional, and reactive. Machiavelli understood the fatal flaw in this mindset. He who controls the tempo of emotion controls the outcome of conflict. Weaponized calm is not passivity, it is emotional domination. 1. Why aggression depends on your reaction. Aggression only works when you mirror emotion, you escalate tension, you justify or defend, you lose composure. An aggressive person is not strong by default. They are borrowing energy from your nervous system. No reaction, no fuel. 2. Calm is a status signal in human psychology. Calmness signals confidence, higher rank, experience, control. Throughout history, kings spoke quietly, judges maintained neutrality, generals issued calm orders. In chaos, noise belongs to those seeking power. Calm belongs to those who already have it. 3. What happens in the aggressor's mind when you respond calmly to aggression? The aggressor experiences confusion. Why isn't this working? Self-doubt. Am I misjudging them? Loss of dominance. I don't control this interaction. This creates an internal imbalance. Aggressive personalities are often emotionally fragile. Calm destabilizes them. 4. The contrast effect. Weaponized calm works because of contrast. Their intensity makes your calm look stronger. Their chaos highlights your control. Their emotion exposes your authority. Observers instinctively side with composure. Machiavelli knew public perception follows emotional gravity. The calm response framework: when confronted aggressively, lower your voice, slow your speech, reduce words. Not clarity, maintain neutral facial expression, pause before replying. The pause is critical. It signals thinking, not reacting. 6. Short, calm statements that end escalation. Examples: I understand your position. That's noted. We'll handle it appropriately. This isn't productive. These statements don't argue, don't submit, don't escalate. They close emotional doors. 7. Why calm feels like provocation to aggressors. Aggressors want emotional dominance, visible impact, control. Calm denies all three. This often makes them escalate further, a mistake. Escalation without response makes them look unstable. 8. The observer effect in social or professional settings. Third parties notice who is emotional, who is controlled, who seems credible. Weaponized calm builds silent allies. People trust stability. 9. Calm is not kindness. This is important. Weaponized calm is not softness, empathy, avoidance. It is emotional discipline paired with strategic intent. Machiavelli warned that kindness without strength invites exploitation. 10. Training weaponized calm daily practices. Breathe slower than others, speak less under stress, delay responses, intentionally observe tone shifts, detach emotion from outcome. You are training dominance of self, the highest form of power. When calm becomes fear-inducing over time, people notice you don't react, you don't escalate, you don't explain. This creates a reputation. It's dangerous to provoke them, not because you are loud, because you are unmovable. Key takeaways: aggression feeds on emotional reaction, calm signals. Higher status emotional control destabilizes attackers. Silence, calm multiplies pressure. The calmest person controls the room.